Hello students, a warm welcome to all of you at AriserTalent. So in our today's lecture, we are going to start our new topic of the class 10th chemistry, that is metals and non-metals. So until now, we have discussed about our two chapters, that is chemical reactions and equations and acid, base and salt. Now we are moving to our fresh topic, that is metals and non-metals. So our today's topic is metals and non-metals. So before starting about the general description of metal and non-metal, first we will go through the introductory part of the regarding the metals and non-metals. So firstly, what will happen in the early time, people used stones for protecting themselves from the animals or from their enemies. So what will happen earlier, early man basically used stones to make weapons. Now then he realized then making the stones or making the weapons from the stones is quite a difficult task. What will happen? Stone is a very hard substance. Firstly, it will take a much time or the much strength to mold itself. So this application or this phenomena is not work so well because the stone is so hard to be molded again and again. Now, after this, second concept that the early men used was that of the wood. Because the stone did not work, he used the wood to make the weapons or the objects to protect themselves from the enemies. So he see that wood is a very moldable substance, that it can be molded into different shapes and it can be molded in a different ways to make the variety of the applications or the variety of the applications. So he started making the objects from the wood. But sometimes after some time he will observe that the weapons made of the wood will be blunt after the some time, because if we use the wood again and again, it will lose its the property of the sharpness and at the some extent it will start becoming the blunt. So this blunt wood cannot be used as a weapon as its application has been made to use for the purpose. So he disregarded this point and both stone and wood cannot be used to make the weapons. Now what will happen, after some time, early men found a metal, that is copper, used for making the different type of the weapons. So he found the copper in the seabeds. Then he observed that he found something that is moldable and that will be like that it can be regain its original shape and size again and again. So he has found two properties regarding the metal. First one is it can be molded into different shapes, and second property is it can be remolded again and again. So discovery of copper lead to the formation of different kind of the compounds, different kind of the weapons. So the copper is considered in the category of the metals. So in our today's life, you can see about the variety of the application of the metals. Firstly, we can see that we have made a copper vessels in our household articles. Second application of the metal, you can see the metals are used worldwide. There is no field which is left with the application of the metal. Our first use of the metal you can see in the coins. We have the different varieties of the metallic coins, that is of the gold, silver, copper. So the first application of the metals will be in the coins. Second application, you can see that in the vehicles we can make a outer part of the body of the any of the vehicle, that is I'm taking an example of the car, bus, train. Many of the travel appliances are made up of the metals. So you can see that in the vehicles part, metals are broadly used. Third category of the metal in the electronic appliances. Many of the electronic appliances or kitchen appliances we have used in our kitchen have the any of the part made of the metal. Suppose I'm considering refrigerator, I'm considering computer, mixer grinder, or a variety of applications like microwave oven. In every part, in every home appliances or electronic appliances, there is some sort of the metal which has been used. So we can say that in our appliances, metal have a great role. Now, we can see the applications of the metal in the body of the aircraft. You have seen that the body of the aircraft is basically made up of the metals. The aluminium metal is used to make the body of the aircraft because the aluminium is light in weight. So you can see that in spacecraft also metal have a different applications. So we can say that there is no such field in which the metal cannot be used. So the question arises, which are those fields in which we can't use metal? So in the fields which we can't use metal, we will use non-metal, that we will discuss in our next category. But firstly, we will learn about the broad classification of the metals. So until now, we are known with about 118 to 120 metals. Among 118 to 120 metals, some metals are solid, and there is only one exception, that is liquid at room temperature, and that metal is only the bromine. So until now, approx 120 elements are known, among which only one is a liquid at room temperature, that is bromine, and apart from this, all the metals will exist in only the solid state. So we are moving to our next category. Non-metals. So now the question arises, apart from the metals, there is something which can be used in place of the metals. So the second category of the classification, we have the non-metal. Now we will discuss about the non-metals. Air is present around us. The air we breathe majorly comprises of non-metal, because the gases present in the atmosphere like oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen are considered in the category of the air. Second thing, I am considering charcoal. Charcoal, graphite, carbon, these all compounds are present in the day-to-day component, like the pencil we use. It consists of the graphite, which is basically a carbon component, and the carbon is a non-metal. Third category, we will take up stones or calcium carbonate or many of the rock-like structures. So we can see that the non-metal is present in them. Now the basic element, that is water we drink. Water is essentially a compound that is comprised of hydrogen and oxygen, and these two are the gases, and this will be considered in the category of the non-metal. Now what will happen if there is no use of metal? So in the category in which the metals are not used, we are going to use the non-metals. Non-metals will have their special identification in the category, that is, apart from the metals, non-metals have their own significance. So now we are again moving to our first category, that is metals. So firstly, we will discuss in this chapter about the physical properties of the metal, chemical property of the metal and non-metal reactions, their extraction processes, and many more topics. Now firstly, we are dealing with the classification of the metal. As I have told you that total 118 to 120 elements in the nature, and among these 80% are metals. Only 22% are non-metals, among which 10 are solid, 11 are gases, and 1 is liquid. So I have already told you that the one which is liquid is bromine. So bromine is the only substance which is liquid in nature. So we can see that total elements that will exist in nature will be 118 to 120. So these are the basic elements, among which 80% of the things or the elements are metals. Now we will learn about how the position of the metals are classified in the periodic table. So if I am considering about the periodic table, I can say that the elements which are placed on the left hand side of the periodic table, it means on the extreme left hand side of the periodic table are the metals, and the elements which are placed on the right hand side of the periodic table are considered as a non-metal. So if I am considering this as a left side and this as a right side, I must say that the elements present in the left hand side are metals, and the elements which are present on the right hand side of the periodic table is non-metals. But what about the hydrogen? Because the position of the hydrogen is not fixed, so the hydrogen will be placed on the top of the periodic table, because it cannot be counted in the left hand side or the right hand side. Now we can see that if we are going from left to right, the metallic property of a substance will going to decrease. I can say that from going to left to right, metallic character decreases. So in going from top to bottom, the metallic character will increase. So what will increase in going from left to right? The non-metallic character will going to increase. So we must say that metallic character will be present only in the extreme left. And this is our extreme right. So in the extreme right of the periodic table, which character is present? The character that is present will be of the non-metals. So we can say that the elements which are situated in the left hand side of the periodic table are metals, and the right hand side of the periodic table are basically non-metals. So now we are moving to our next classification. We will have a general property of metal and non-metal, but firstly we will discuss which element will going to behave like a metal and which is going to behave like a non-metal. So if any element having a 1, 2 or 3 electrons in their outermost shell can be considered in the category of the metal. Now if I am considering lithium, lithium is having an electronic configuration of 3, atomic number 3. So hydrogen, helium, lithium, it means it will have a no electron in the outermost shell. If I am considering sodium, its electronic configuration will be 281, that is 11 atomic number. So we can say there is a 1 electron present in the outermost shell. So sodium will going to behave like a metal. If I am considering aluminium, its electronic configuration will be 283 because atomic number is having 13. So we have 3 electrons in the outermost shell. So we can say that if the element is having the 1, 2 or 3 electrons in the outermost shell, we must say that the compounds or the elements are categorized in the category of the metal. It means all the alkali metals have 1 electron in their outermost shell. But there is one exception exists here. So the exception is here will be hydrogen and helium. Now we know that atomic number for hydrogen is 1 and for the helium the atomic number is 2, and they both contain 1 electron in their shell. So in its outermost shell there is 1 electron, in its outermost shell there is 2 electrons, but these will not be classified in the category of the metals. These are classified as a non-metal. So hydrogen and helium are basically considered in the category of the non-metals. So these are the exception here, that hydrogen and helium will be non-metals. So this is all about the basic classification of the metals, how metals are classified and what is the position of the metals in the periodic table. So the property we have discussed is non-metals are brittle in nature, non-metals are not ductile, non-metals are non-malleable, and the exceptions we have seen about the conductivity, that they are the bad conductor of heat and electricity, but the exception here is graphite. Non-metals are not lustrous, it means they do not have any shiny appearance, but in this category we have an exception, that is iodine and graphite. Now we are moving to our next physical properties, that is non-metals may be solid, liquid or gas. Metals are only solid at the room temperature, but in case of the non-metals, they are solid, liquid and gas. Again in this category, we have one exception, that is bromine. So, exception here is bromine. Bromine is basically liquid at room temperature. So, non-metals are generally solid, liquid and gas, but bromine is an exception. Non-metals are generally soft, that they can be cut into the knife, but we have talked about the example, that is diamond having a very hard rigid structure, so the diamond is an exception here. Non-metals have low melting and boiling point as they do not have a very hard and rigid structure, but in this case another exception is graphite. Graphite, in spite of being non-metal, having a melting point nearly 3730 degrees Celsius. And we have talked about the term densities. Non-metals generally have a low density, but in case of iodine, it has a high density, and if I'm talking about the sulfur, it has a low density. But one exception always exists there, that is iodine. Iodine is having a very high density, that is approximately equal to 14 gram per centimeter cube. So this is all about the physical properties of the metals and non-metals we have discussed in this lecture. Now we are left with the chemical properties of both the elements. So we will discuss the chemical properties of metals and non-metals in our next lecture. So this lecture is over for today. Thank you so much and have a nice day.